Bianan sa RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS DXKS Jess Ochenta ang inyong Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsibiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS Jess Ochenta ang inyong Radio Ronda.
Good evening, I'm Pio Ontiveros. Welcome to News Night, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Tonight on the program, Senator Bato de la Rosa is joining the presidential race as the Duterte administration's bet in yet another surprise on the last day of filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 elections. The government eases some quarantine and travel rules as the health department confirms the downward trend in COVID-19 cases is no longer artificial. And a first for the country, the CEO of online news agency Rappler, Maria Ressa, along with a Russian journalist, wins the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize for efforts to safeguard freedom of expression. The Commission on Elections wraps up the filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 polls. For the past week, we've seen political veterans, the unexpected tandems, familiar faces, newbies, and even ordinary Filipinos with interesting platforms, all of them formalizing their bids for public office. Today's biggest surprise, though, was from a faction of the ruling party, the PDP Laban, Senator Bato de la Rosa, running for president. Our Tristan Nadalo joins us live from Sofitel's Harbor Garden 10. Tristan, tell us more about this.
Pia, in what could be a surprise move from PDP Laban Party or faction led by Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa has filed a certificate of candidacy for president. De la Rosa said that he accepted the nomination because the party told him that they could no longer find anyone or a standard bearer who could continue the legacy of President Rodrigo Duterte. De la Rosa, however, said that he is open on the possibility of Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte replacing him. But De la Rosa also defended accusations or claims that he is making a mockery of the election process. Let's listen in.
Look like a mockery to you? Huh?
Sir, but you say...
Do I look like a mockery to you? I won as a senator. Number 5 po ako last election.
Also earlier, President Duterte showed his full support to the PDP Laban senatorial slate to file their COCs this afternoon. It includes Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo, Agrarian Reform Secretary John Castriciones, the ICT Secretary and former Senator Gringo Honasan, Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission Chairman Greco Belgica, and House Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta, as well as Robin Padilla and broadcaster Ray Langit. Mocha Uson also filed their COC for party list representative under MOCA or Mothers for Change party list. The president did not give a speech and immediately left after endorsing and taking photos with the PDP Laban bets. In the meantime, Senator Kiko Pangilinan also filed his COC for Vice President this morning. He was accompanied by Vice President Lenny Robredo. Former Ifugao Representative and Liberal Party Vice President Teddy Bagilat also filed his COC for senators. Meantime, Senators Win Gatchalian, Laila De Lima, Richard Gordon, and former Vice President Noli De Castro also filed their COCs for senator. The race for party list groups also heats up with star-studded aspirants Nora Honor, Carla Estrada, and party list led by actor Tom Rodriguez filed their COCs. Overall, the Commission on Elections said that the week-long conduct of COC filing nationwide was peaceful, but it ain't over until it's over because the substitution period is still until November 15. Back to you, Pia.
Tristan Odalo there reporting. Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte again rejects calls to run for president. In her latest post on Facebook, the presidential daughter thanks those who express their support, but says she is, quote, presenting myself to the Davaoenos as mayor for the third and last time in my life as a politician, unquote. The mayor is also calling on the public to work together for honest, orderly, and credible elections during the week-long filing of COCs in Pasay. Her supporters, donning green, have gathered outside Sofitel's Harbor Garden tent. They include a group of barangay officials from Davao City who flew into Manila earlier this week. For Presidential Chief Legal Counsel and Senatorial aspirant Salvador Panelo, it's not yet too late for Sara Duterte.
And then, lahat nananalangin na dumating siya. Oh, meron pa naman November 15 kung hindi dumating ngayon.
So, umaasa tayo na substitution yung gagawin?
Maraming umaasa na sana magbago ang kanyang isipan.
Pero as of now, wala po tayong info kung
Sa ngayon, ang alam ko nasa Maynila siya, hindi siya tumuloy ng Singapore. Hindi ko alam kung nagdarasal pa ang taong bayan.
Expect surprises or last-minute changes if aspirants make use of the substitution option. Now, how does that work? First, there's what the COMELEC calls voluntary substitution, where an aspirant gives way to a fellow party member. Take President Duterte, for example. He was able to run for the top post in 2016, even if he submitted his COC a month after the deadline. He substituted for party mate Martin Dino. Dino filed his COC as PDP Laban's presidential nominee, but withdrew. There is also involuntary substitution, which can be applied if a candidate dies or gets disqualified. A relative who shares the same surname may jump in until noontime of election day. The COMELEC says the substitution option is not available for aspirants running as independents. Analysts believe it is time to scrap the substitution system, describing it as deceptive. There is a November 15 deadline, so names in the ballot will only be finalized after that.
You're fooling the people. You're lying to the people. From the very beginning, you know what you want to do. And then you just pretend that you've changed your mind.
The COMELEC says it will issue a tentative list of COC filers this October 29th. Now, the opposition tandem has been revealed. Vice President Leni Robredo picked Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan as her running mate. But what made her choose Pangilinan, and why is she running as an independent? Our senior correspondent, Anjo Alimario, gives us details.
It's official. Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Francis Pangilinan are the faces of the opposition in next year's elections. Facing the media for the first time, Robredo explained why she chose Pangilinan.
Unang-una, matagal na kami magkasangga sa laban. Pangalawa, shared yung aming mga paniniwala, mga prinsipyo, mga aspirations para sa bayan. Paano namin dadalhin yung bayan?
Pangilinan turned emotional as he accepted Robredo's challenge.
Ang pangarap ko para sa bayan, sana all may trabaho at maayos na kita. Sana all may sapat na pagkain sa mesa. Sana all may bakuna. Sana all ligtas. Ligtas sa sakit. Sana all may sariling tahanan. Sana all makapagtapos ng pag-aaral.
Robredo is running as an independent but clarified she's not leaving the Liberal Party.
Running for independent is our symbolic way of showing na bukas kami sa pakikipag-alyansa sa maraming mga partido.
Pink dominated the digital space yesterday, overwhelming Robredo herself. Why the particular color? She says it's become a symbol of protest.
Ang nilalabanan natin ngayon, hindi lang yung pagbabalik ng anak ng diktador, pero ang nilalabanan natin ngayon, masamang pamamahala, na siya yung nagiging sanhi ng mga problemang pinagdadaanan natin ngayon, yung bulok na klase ng politika na paulit-ulit nangyayari sa atin ngayon.
The presidential hopeful points out color doesn't define a person but one's choices. The tandem will reveal its senatorial slate next week, but has so far named re-electionist Senators Risa Ontiveros and Laila de Lima, former Senator Sonny Trillanes, former Congressman Teddy Bagilat, and human rights lawyer Shell Jokno. Robredo says the idea is to get from different groups and political parties. As to the future of unity talks,
while our lines remain open, yung focus na ngayon is uniting hindi yung mga principals, pero uniting yung taong bayan.
Robredo admits Isko Moreno's stance on the Marcos family in a way affected her decision to run, stressing that the Marcoses are non-negotiables for her. Moreno has said he admired the late dictator at some point for being a visionary, but added that martial law must never happen again. Last year, President Duterte threatened Robredo that he'll make her presidential run a nightmare. Her response, it's no longer her problem. She also tells the president to just focus on the pandemic. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Moreno, in response questions if Robredo proceeded with her presidential bid on the basis of the Marcoses, he also hit the vice president, saying she cannot speak of unity considering she's running as an independent and not under her own political party. Robredo is chairperson of the Liberal Party. Coming up on Newsnight, a tropical depression is bringing rain to parts of the country. Find out which areas are affected. And we get up close with Senator Bato de la Rosa, who filed his certificate of candidacy for president just this afternoon. He joins us live when we return.
Gumagaan ang inuman pag sunlight. Oy, musta?
Ako, stressed sa work, kaya ini-imagine kong nasa beach ako.
Pagtapos ng mabigat na araw, mag-inuman with friends and sunlight.
Ulitin natin to. Ang alin? Imagine?
Hindi, mag-inuman. Sunlight.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
We're back.
Hell yeah!
I take it very, very seriously.
This week on Hollywood Express. F9 is already a record breaker.
It's very humbling to watch them and be able to take advice from them.
A magical reunion is in the works.
Every night, we take a hard look at the stories and provide you with multiple points of view from here and around the world. Now, we'll bring you more news you can use from the trading floor and the global markets, and bring you more news you can trust in business and finance. Buy, sell, hold on The Final Word, weekdays at 9 p.m. only on CNN Philippines.
filled with linamnam awaits. Amoy pa lang, it already catches my attention. The recipe is as easy as 1, 2, and 3.
Gawin mo yan sa bite at siguradong hindi ka magkakamali.
My verdict is wow. I can't wait to serve this to my family. It is so delicious. I'm Christine Jacobs-Sandejas, and welcome to Wholesome Meals, A Better Life.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Pag-asa forecasts rains in parts of the country because of Tropical Depression Maring. It was last spotted east of Catarman in northern Samar. The Weather Bureau says storm signals are unlikely to be raised and that Maring may weaken in the next 24 hours, but it may merge with a tropical cyclone still outside Philippine territory. Maring will bring light to moderate with at times heavy rains over Bicol, eastern Visayas, Caraga, Cebu, and Bohol. Moderate to rough seas also expected in those areas. Continuous rains have triggered a landslide in Maasin City in southern Leyte. Clearing operations underway after the landslide damaged a portion of a road in Barangay Hantag. The Interagency Task Force gives the go signal for the shorter quarantine of inbound travelers. Its spokesman, Harry Roque, says those coming from green or yellow areas only need to undergo a 10-day facility-based and home quarantine from the original 14 days. But this is exclusive to fully vaccinated individuals. Roque says those unvaccinated or partially inoculated must still complete the 2-week quarantine. The same applies to travelers whose vaccination status cannot be validated. Green and yellow countries are those tagged as low and moderate risk. Meanwhile, more people are now permitted to go to areas under the lowest quarantine levels, or GCQ and MGCQ. The IATF says point-to-point interzonal trips will be allowed for the fully inoculated, senior citizens, persons with comorbidities or health risks, and pregnant women. This will also be imposed on individuals below 18, but strict compliance to health protocols must be observed. Now, the Health Department says the downward trend in COVID-19 cases is no longer artificial, citing the decrease in positivity and hospitalization rates. But it notes that the Cordilleras, Ilocos, and Cagayan Valley remain at high risk, and that cases in Bicol, Mimaropa, and the Zamboanga Peninsula are increasing. Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration says there is still no need for booster shots for now, citing data on breakthrough infections. Carolyn Bonquin tells us more.
Over 2.5 million Moderna and AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines were added to the country's supply Friday. Much needed as the government moves to vaccinating the general population, including those aged 12 to 17.
We are allocating more or less 45,000 to 50,000 muna initially for the pilot.
But none is reserved yet for booster shots. On Wednesday, the vaccines are hinted on giving health workers booster shots anytime between November and January. But Health and Food and Drug Administration officials are on the same page. It's not yet time for booster shots.
Wala naman tayong nakikita na nagwe-wane yung protection ng mga vaccine, no? Wala naman tayong nakikitang pagdami ng nagkakaroon ng breakthrough infections through time.
Napag-aralan na po ng ating mga eksperto itong booster doses or third doses. Nakita po dito sa mga pag-aaral na sinagawa na wala pa hong sapat na ebidensya para magbigay tayo ng third doses sa ngayon.
FDA's latest data show breakthrough infections account for less than 1% of the fully vaccinated. 516 COVID cases and 14 deaths out of 20 million. Majority had Sinovac and are aged 18 to 39.
Kaya yung nakikita rin naman natin breakthrough infection, reflective din naman, no, on the proportion ng vaccines. Walang namamatay dito sa 18 to 39 age group ng mga vaccinated. Kahit 5% lamang yung senior citizens na nagkakaroon ng as percentage of the breakthrough infections, all the deaths are almost coming from the senior citizens.
This is only based on community reports to the FDA. Breakthrough infection refers to COVID infection 2 weeks after a person completed the vaccination. The health department says it also did a survey among 10,000 health workers. While 90% wanted a booster, only half are willing to take it without experts' recommendation.
Hindi sarado ang ating, hindi tayo sarado sa booster. We also would like to recommend that, but we need to complete the evidence.
Several countries like the US already give booster to people with compromised immune system. There were already reports of waning efficacy of vaccines like Sinovac, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca at about 6 months. If that's really the case, infectious diseases expert Dr. Regine Solante tells CNN Philippines there could be an uptick on breakthrough infections by the end of the year. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Government officials are upbeat on the continuous arrival of COVID-19 vaccines. The vaccine czar says the country is receiving about 1.4 million doses every day. Officials are urging local governments to encourage constituents to take the vaccine. Here's what Carlito Galvez had to say about calls to let LGUs purchase their COVID-19 shots directly from manufacturers.
Dapat malaman ng LGU, we have enough vaccine. Hindi na kailangan bumili. Bumili na lang sila ng syringes, yung tuberculin syringes. Kasi bumabaha na yung vaccine natin, bakit pa tayo bibili? Makakuha tayo niyan. Ang ano natin, tsaka unang-una, walang manufacturer na gusto na diretso. Gusto nila yun sa gobyerno kasi mas mabilis. Ang ano natin siguro, magkaroon tayo ng programa, maybe 2022. Pero sa ngayon, marami na po tayong vaccine. 33 million nasa stockpile natin, nasa warehouses ng LGUs at ng CHD.
Galvez adds he's hoping that half of the population will be vaccinated by the end of the year. A big step towards COVID-19 vaccines for younger children in the United States. Pfizer seeks emergency use approval from regulators to administer shots to kids aged 5 to 11 years old. CNN's Mandy Gaither has more in today's Health Minute.
If authorized, it would be the first COVID-19 vaccine for younger children. Pfizer officially applying for emergency use authorization for kids ages 5 to 11.
This is an important development.
The FDA has scheduled time to review the Pfizer data October 26th. That would be followed by consideration by the CDC. While it's still unclear how long a decision may take, here was the timeline for adults. Pfizer applied for an EUA on November 20th, 2020. It was authorized December 11th.
We are ready. We have the supply. We're working with states to set up convenient locations for parents and kids to get vaccinated, including pediatricians' offices and community sites.
Pfizer says in trials, more than 2,200 children were given 1/3 of the dose adults get. The company found its vaccine safe and generated a robust antibody response. But officials know they're continuing to contend with vaccine hesitancy.
I would anticipate that as parents and their children have questions of their pediatricians and other local health professionals, and they get those questions answered, that more and more parents and kids will want their kids to get vaccinated.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Updates now on the last-minute additions to hopefuls for local posts here in Metro Manila. Marcy Teodoro filed his certificate of candidacy today, gunning for his third and final term as Marikina City Mayor. Teodoro will face off against the city's first district representative, Bayani Fernando, who was previously mayor from 1992 to 2001. The two were once longtime allies, but their cooperation turned sour when Teodoro complained of Fernando's encroachment in a portion of Marikina River that the former believes contributes to flooding in the city. In Manila, retired police officer Elmer Hamias joins the mayoralty race known as the Barako ng Maynila. Hamias ran for vice mayor in 2019 but lost to Honey Lacuna, who is also gunning for the city's top post next year. The daughter of former Manila Mayor Alfredo Lim hopes to follow in his footsteps. Cristina Lim Raimundo filed her certificate of candidacy today for mayor with Lucy Lapinig as her running mate. Now over in the region, Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia formalizes her re-election bid. Garcia will go up against former Tourism Secretary Joseph Ace Durano, who criticized her pandemic response efforts. She shrugged off the criticism, saying Durano only made noise when election season neared. Garcia was previously Cebu governor from 2004 to 2013. In Albay, Legazpi City Mayor Noel Rosal will run for governor of the province. Rosal will challenge incumbent Governor Al Francis Bichara, who is running for his third and final term. Rosal's wife, Geraldine, also filed her COC, aiming to succeed him as mayor. When we return and up close with presidential aspirant Senator Bato de la Rosa, we'll be right back.
Beer call muna tayo, kahit kailan walang iwanan. Beer call muna tayo, beer call muna tayo.
Nagsimula sa isang pangarap.
Ako na po, ma'am.
Ika'y tutulungang ibahin ang buhay na nakasanayan.
Naka 24 months ka na sa pag-ibig.
May panghulog na ako sa motor.
Uy, bagong motor!
Gagawa ng hakbang para mapaghandaan ng forever.
Ingat ka, ha?
At harapin ang bukas nang may maaasahan. Simulan mo na ang forever mo ngayon. Fund your forever with Pag-ibig Fund.
Register today!
For my babies, only vet-approved Nutri-Chunks puppies. The only one with active boost and prebiotics na Pampalisto. Made with real meat with essential nutrients to help them grow strong and healthy. Happiness! Listo, ganado sa Nutri-Chunks puppies.
San Miguel flavored beer! Yay! Ang magmahal sa kaaway, mas matamis ang buhay. Make life sweet with San Miguel flavored beer with the deliciously refreshing flavors of apple, lychee, and lemon with just the right beer buzz. San Miguel flavored beer. Bili na sa suking tindahan.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. I'm Pio Ontiveros. Going back to our top story, Senator Bato de la Rosa is gunning for the presidency in a surprise move. On the last day of the filing of COCs, de la Rosa will be running under the ruling party, PDP Laban. He now joins us live for Up Close. Good evening, Senator Bato, and thank you very much for joining us, sir. Nagulat naman po kami sa inyo para po kayong, for lack of a better comparison, para po kayong Jack in the Box. Biglang lumabas kayo ng ganon. Nakakagulat naman.
Well, diskarte yan pa para pag maaga ka kasi mag-announce.
Diskarte.
Sisirain ka kaagad. Kaya, tama yung last minute na pag-file natin.
Oo, so parang diskarte na surprise. Pero sir, last minute na pag-file, tapos sabi nyo, hindi na, parang hindi ma-transmit, malaman ng ibang tao. Pero last minute din po ba yung decision na mag-file kayo? Kasi nga, walang nag-file this morning na isang nagngangalang Sara Duterte. Ganun po ba?
Kami kinukonsider naman ng partido, pero wala pang final decision na gawa ang partido kung sino talaga sa amin. Kinukonsider na kami noon pa. Pero ang final decision is itong mga letter based na lang ng itong pag-filing na. Well, to be frank, just in case, ganito lang ang status natin. Just in case, makapag-decide si Inday Sara na tumakbo at madesisyonan ng partido namin, ng PDP Laban, na i-adapt siya as our standard bearer, then magka-desisyonan talaga na siya ipapalit sa akin, so no problem with me. I will abide by party decisions. As I have said, I am a good soldier. Sunod lang ako sa instruction ng aming partido. So ngayon, pinatakbo ako ng partido.
So
this
kanina,
is the decision of the party na tumakbo.
Yes. Well, Senator, so kanina lang po kayo sinabihan na bato mag-file
Hello?
na kayo ng COC for President kasi hindi magfa-file ngayon si Sara. Kanina lang po ba kayo sinabihan, sir, na mag-file na po kayo kasi hindi magfa-file si Sara?
To be frank,
Senator
hindi
Bato?
naman kanina lang. May mga usapan na kami kung pwedeng ako ang tumakbo as standard bearer ng aming partido. Hindi naman right away, kanina lang.
Okay. Pero sir, ang problema lang po, paano po yung rules on substitution? Because ang kailangan po ata, miyembro din ng partido. Si Mayor Sara ba is a member of the PDP Laban? Hindi po ba siya ay miyembro and, a leader of the hugpong ng pagbabago? And if that is the case, paano po yon? Paano po siya magsa-substitute for you if, like you said, you're standing in there and if she decides na gusto niya tumakbo, you will step aside. So how is that going to happen kung hindi po siya member ng PDP Laban?
May proseso naman na gagawin niya, no? But again, mahirap pangunahan si Mayor Inday. Depende nga kung gusto niyang tumakbo under the PDP Laban Party. At kung gusto man talaga niya at madesisyonan ng aming partido na siya ay adapt as our standard bearer, pwede naman siyang mag-take out kaagad-agad at bibigyan ng kuna, then pwede siyang tumakbo.
Okay. But like you said, sir, this is a standby option, no? Basta't nag-file na kayo para meron ng standard bearer, para merong running mate si Bongo who's running for VP. Pero paano po kung matutuloy na nga? Paano po kung you will end up running for president because Sara Duterte will decide na, no, I'm not going to run for president and I want to run for mayor of Davao City?
Well, in that case, kaya ako nag-file because I am running for the presidency. So, in that case, bakit? Aatras ba ako? Hindi ako atras kung ganun. Andito, I am decision na yan ng partido namin na ako magiging standard bearer, tuluyan ko na ito.
Okay.
Tuluyan natin.
Okay, so itutuloy nyo. Tatakbo kayong presidente for as the standard bearer of the ruling party, the PDP Laban, if Sara does not change her mind about running for president. But at the same time, syempre, meron pa ring chance na hindi po kayo mananalo. So, and kung hindi kayo manalo, madali naman pong bumalik sa Senado dahil tumakbo lang naman po kayo noong 2019. Hindi po ba? So, all you need to do is return to the Senate and finish your term until 2025. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, gano'n naman talaga maging senaryo. Manalo tayo,
okay.
matalo, may senador pa rin naman ako.
Oo, that's right. Senador, and you won in 2019. You came in number 5. You had 19 million votes. And maybe that is what is giving you that confidence. No? But sir, now, the question here is, if you win, tuloy po ba yung drug war as President Duterte had run it? No? When you were Chief PNP, you were the first Chief PNP of President Duterte from 2016 June hanggang 2018. Tuloy po ba yon as it is, as it was? Would you also want to reinstitute yung Oplan Tokhang, which was very, which turned out to be very controversial?
Well, alam mo, Pia, the reason why our party made the decision for me to run, dahil ang sabi nga ng aming partido is that walang ibang pwedeng makapagpatuloy sa legacy ng Duterte administration kundi ako. Yung droga, laban sa droga, yung sa krimen, sa corruption, sa terorismo, sa anti-insurgency. Ako ang napusuan na, napili nila na magpapatuloy. So, kung suswertehin tayo, ituloy natin yan. Yung problema sa NPA, pilitin natin matapos yan. Yung problema sa droga, pagsisikapan natin kung merong mga kailangang refinement na gagawin sa ating mga policies, din gagawin natin yan. Basta hindi tayo hinto sa ating laban sa droga, krimen, insurgency, terorismo at korupsyon. Kasi yan naman ang rason bakit ako pinili ng partido para ipagpatuloy ang nasimula ng ating Pangulong Duterte.
So tuloy ang Oplan Tokhang, tuloy ang the fight against the communists to defeat the communist insurgency, tuloy ang NTF-ELCAC, for example, which is another very controversial feature of the Duterte administration. Pero tuloy pa rin po yung ICC probe, hindi po ba? Is that something on your mind at the moment, Senator Bato?
Well, Pia, hindi naman siguro ako masabi natin na walang bayag. Ginawa namin yon para sa kabutihan ng ating bansa, para matahimik ang ating bansa, para ang mga anak ninyo ay makakapaglakad sa kalsada ng hindi na mamulistya, para makatulog kayo ng mga himbing tuwing gabi, na walang akyat bahay na akyat sa bahay nyo na under the influence of drugs. Ginawa namin yun. So, kung meron man kami kakaharapin na problema, well, andito ako, hindi ako tatakbo. Harapin ko yan. May bayag tayo, ginawa natin yan, so harapin natin yan. So, ganun lang po yun.
Okay. Senator Bato,
maraming nagsasabi
yes,
na mali yung...
Sorry, please go ahead. Marami nagsasabing mali ang...
Kung marami nagkikriticize na mali yung ginagawa nating war on drugs, marami rin naman ang nasasayahan. Marami rin nagpapasalamat sa ginawa nating war on drugs. So bakit natin ihinto?
Okay. Well, Senator Bato, of course, bukod sa malaking problema sa drugs, sa drug war, sa Oplan Tokhang, meron pang isa pa pong napakalaking problema, sir, and I hope you can still hear me, yung pandemic, no? But we're going to continue this discussion in just a bit. Babalikan po natin si Senator Bato de la Rosa after the break. We'll be right back.
Another day filled with linamnam awaits us. Amoy pa lang, it already catches my attention. The recipe is as easy as 1, 2, and 3.
Gawin mo yan sa bite at siguradong hindi ka magkakamali.
My verdict is wow. I can't wait to serve this to my family. It is so delicious. I'm Christine Jacob Sandejas, and welcome to Wholesome Meals, A Better Life.
Every night, we take a hard look at the stories and provide you with multiple points of view from here and around the world. Now, we'll bring you more news you can use from the trading floor and the global markets, and bring you more news you can trust in business and finance. Buy, sell, hold on The Final Word, weekdays at 9 p.m. only on CNN Philippines.
We're back.
Hell yeah!
I take it very, very seriously.
This week on Hollywood Express. F9 is already a record breaker.
It's very humbling to watch them and be able to take advice from them.
A magical reunion is in the works.
Bawal muna ang pakikipag-usap sa loob ng mga tren ng MRT. Some residents are back on the streets of Sampaloc, Manila after the 48-hour lockdown. Pagtaas ng mga kaso ng COVID-19 dito sa bansa. Naglagay na ng mga improvised barriers para sa mga nagbibisikleta. Typhoon Ulysses, a super typhoon. Christine Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. You're still watching our up-close segment with former Senator Bato de la Rosa, who just this afternoon filed his certificate of candidacy to run for president under the ruling party, the PDP laban. Senator Bato, kanina ang tanong ko po syempre malaking problema yung drug war, the war against crime also, but ang pinakamalaking problema na talagang the next administration will have to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, is the pandemic. So ano po yung plano ninyo para sa pandemya? Paano po yung government response to the pandemic, Senator Bato?
Well, gagawin natin yan para makarecover tayo sa epekto ng pandemic. Kung papalarin man, dapat kumuha tayo ng magaling na economic team natin para siguradong maganda yung mga gagawin natin programa. Yun po ang ating gagawin. Hindi tayo kukuha ng mga economic team na mahina. Dapat yung malalakas para gaganda yung takbo ng ating bansa economically. As I have said, hindi ko forte yung ekonomiya, hindi ko forte yan, pero I'm willing to listen to advisors.
Okay, so a team of very good economic experts. Paano po yung health experts, sir? Or you would hire, you would get Francisco Duque to be your health secretary again? Same team ngayon? Para bang yun po ba yung kukunin nyo para i-handle yung pandemic?
Hindi naman si Duque lang ang magaling. Marami pa naman dyan. So, pwede naman siguro tayo kumuha ng magagaling na health experts na para tumugon sa problema ng pandemya, di ba?
Okay. Senator Bato, I remember the day after the elections na interview ko po kayo and tinatanong ko po, you said that kung merong, and I paraphrase, no, kung merong mga seminar dyan na pwede kong i-attendan, I will go to those seminars, etc. And that kind of stuck to people's minds, no. So now the question is, if you're running for president, you filed COC for president, so ngayon pa lang talagang puspusan na ang inyong paghahanda para maging pangulo. You will really do everything in your power to prepare just in case you do run and you do win as president.
Yeah, kailangan talagang mag-prepare ka. Pero Pia, you have to take note na yung sinabi ko na kailangan ko magpa-train dahil nga legislation is a new world for me. I have been with the executive branch of government in my whole life. First time na ako, bago lang ako nalipat sa legislative. So, ito naman pagkapangulo ay more on execution of laws, more on administration. So, I think hindi ako ganong mahirapan. Doon lang ako nahirapan sa pagiging senador dahil nga
mahirapan po.
Bago sa akin yun, bago.
Oo. Mahirapan po ba kayo, Senator Bato? Halimbawa, President Bato na po kayo, no? Tapos, syempre, ang may Senado. Ngayon kasi, nag-iimbestiga ang Senado sa mga umano'y anomalya sa pandemic response funds, no? At sabi nga ni Presidente Duterte, ayaw niya na sumabak dyan yung mga cabinet officials niya. Is that how you will also handle the way the Senate is investigating the executive's handling of the pandemic response funds?
Anong tanong mo, Pia? Hello?
I'm sorry, sir. What did you say? Yeah, hindi niyo po ako narinig.
Yeah, hindi klaro yung tanong. Pakiulit, please.
Okay. Oo, kasi sabi nyo kanina, hindi kayo mahihirapan sa executive kasi nanggaling naman po kayo doon, nag-chief PNP po kayo. So kung babalik kayo sa executive, maging President Bato de la Rosa kayo, how will you handle Senate investigations into the government's pandemic response?
Well, I understand perfectly well about the principle of separation of powers. It is enshrined in our Constitution. Iba yung trabaho ng executive, ibang trabaho ng legislative, iba ang trabaho ng judiciary. So, irerespetuhin ko yan, yung separation of powers. Kasi, that is very important. Yung doctrine of checks and balances ay dapat mananatili yan. Kaya I know how to deal with it.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear. And Senator Bato, isang pahabol na lang and very brief answer from you. Ano po yung pangalan na nakalagay doon sa Certificate of Nomination na ginawa ni Secretary Cusi? Pangalan niyo po ba yun nandun or pangalan ni Sara Duterte or ibang pangalan?
Hindi ba pwede yan? Hindi matatanggapin ng kumilik yan kung pangalan ng ibang tao nakalagay doon tapos mukha ni Bato ang
yung original, sir, yung una. Oo.
Anong una?
Yung una. Kasi, di ba, meron daw Certificate of Candidacy, may pangalan na sana eh. Tapos, ayaw pa sabihin ni Al Cusi kung sino yon. So, sino yon? Kaninong pangalan yon? Sige na, sir, sabihin nyo na. 1 minute to go before we exit.
Ako yun. Sabi nga ni Secretary Cusi, meron siyang surprise na candidate. So, ako yun. Na-surprise na silang lahat.
Okay. So kayo yung kayo po yung humindi dati? Ganun ba? Kasi sabi niya before, a few days ago, kasi ayaw nag-decline eh. Sino yon? Sino yung nag-decline? Kayo po ba yon?
Ay, hindi ako yun. Hindi ako yung nag-decline.
O iba. So sino yon? Si Sara yon? Sino po yon?
I don't know. I don't know kung sino yun.
Dali. You don't know? Sige.
Hindi ko alam.
Okay. Anyway, Senator Bato de la Rosa, sir, thank you very much for joining us here on Up Close on Newsnight. Salamat po, sir. Create more livelihood opportunities for Filipinos even beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. That is the long-term goal of a diversified conglomerate with its programs. Over 200 residents of the San Miguel Christian Gayeta Village received their paychecks from the Dole Tupad program after completing temporary work. But San Miguel Corporation, in partnership with the government, is hoping to help them find housing and stable income to last even after the pandemic.
Ang atin pong programang pabahay dito sa pamumuno ni Ginoong Ramon Ang ng San Miguel Corporation ay hindi natatapos sa pagpapalipat lamang ng mga residente sa baybay dagat ng laylayan ng Sariaya, Quezon. Ito po ay may kasamang pangkabuhayan. Kagaya nitong event natin ngayon, meron tayong tupad payout. Isa sa mga programa ng gobyerno yung pagbibigay ng tulong pangkabuhayan para sa ating mga displaced workers. So, ito po ay na-access natin.
SMC also encourages individuals to avail of TESDA's free skills training programs, including hog raising and organic farming, with the grand opening of San Miguel Market next week, where farmers and fishermen can sell their goods. The conglomerate hopes to equip residents with skills to live sustainably. And before we go, this breaking news at this hour: this year's Nobel Peace Prize goes to a pair who fought for freedom of expression, and one of them, our very own, Rappler CEO Maria Ressa, was awarded the honor for defending democracy and press freedom. The organization cited the publication's close coverage of Duterte's anti-drug campaign and efforts to expose abuse of power. Ressa received the accolade alongside Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov, who founded a similar news company. Ressa is the first Filipino to win the prestigious award. Previous winners include Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., Lech Walesa, Mikhail Gorbachev, and 4 U.S. presidents. 78 days left before Christmas, and that is it for now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again at 7 for News.ph. I'm Pio Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Kini ang sibianan sa RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS. DXKS 1080. Ang inyong Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsibiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network, DXKS 1080. Ang inyong Radio Ronda.
Many of us have heard about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Initially first diagnosed in childhood, but it can last into adulthood. It's a mental health condition that affects a person's ability to focus, sit still, and control impulsive behaviors. As a result, one's quality of life can be affected. But with proper education, treatment, and support, adults living with it can manage and thrive. On the program today, we'll discuss how to diagnose ADHD, its misconceptions, and how to manage it. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk only on CNN Philippines. ADHD often goes unrecognized throughout childhood, but the more responsibilities we have as we get older, the greater the demand on our capacity to focus, stay organized, and be reliable. This is why it's important to diagnose and treat the condition as early as possible. Let's welcome our guests for today. With us is Dr. Corazon Angela Cuadro. She's an adult psychiatrist from the Medical City. Also with us is Dr. Angie Sievert Fernandez. She's a child developmental psychologist from the St. Luke's Medical Center. Dr. Quads, tell us what it means for adults with ADHD to lack focus, because it's a bit more than just finding it hard to listen in class or to listen to a speech, isn't it?
In adults, we usually see manifestations in terms of impulsivity, irritability, a difficulty focusing, maybe some restlessness, a little fidgeting over here and there. So that's the typical presentation of ADHD in adults. And of course, in terms of how that manifests in the adult life, then that will be seen in occupational functioning, academic functioning, social, in relationships, in activities of daily living like managing of finances, chores around the house, the daily grind.
Dr. Angie, could you tell us how it would manifest within a child? At what age would one expect this type of condition to be seen, and how would this progress?
What is important for people to understand is just because makulit, malikot, doesn't mean may ADHD na agad. There are things that we have to be looking at also. Okay, how many of these symptoms do they manifest? They have to manifest as children at least 6 of the listed symptoms. Plus, it has to occur in 2 settings. Hindi lang sa bahay, hindi lang sa school, hindi lang sa parties, but at least in 2 settings, it occurs consistently. Okay? Kasi minsan, Dr. Freddy, may tendency na di nakafocus, malikot, ay may ADHD yan. But it goes more, it goes beyond that.
Aside from some of the symptoms that you mentioned, how ADHD can present in adulthood, are there other practical applications where we could see that there could be a possibility of a diagnosis of ADHD? Let's go with, let's say, for example, career choices, or maybe how well they have stability in their life. Could this be a telltale sign of ADHD?
You know how sometimes there are career choices that don't fit that. So there would be obvious bothersome symptoms that way. For example, some find that they don't fit well with some patients with ADHD find that they don't fit well with a desk job. Some find that they thrive more when they are out in the field. Halimbawa lang po yun . So maybe that's an example.
How would someone know the difference between maybe just a plain behavioral problem and that of ADHD? So how would ADHD in an adult be diagnosed?
It would be worthwhile to go for at least an initial evaluation. Say with your trusted psychologist, psychiatrist, family doctors. You know what we work with often? School guidance counselors, college or university faculty or administrators, and human resource staff, because they do pick up some of the possible symptoms that would warrant at least an initial evaluation or screening.
What are some of these factors kaya that could affect someone to develop ADHD early on?
The research will tell us that genetics might be is a factor. There's a genetic link when it comes to ADHD. There are, let's say, associations, causal associations, we call it. Like, for example, maybe between alcohol use, during pregnancy and all of these things, no, or premature birth or exposure to lead paint in childhood. These are some things that may be causal but are not definite yet.
And when it comes to managing or lessening the exacerbations of the symptoms, Dr. Angie, would you say that it is somewhat more beneficial if the ADHD was spotted earlier?
It's always best to diagnose it early. It's always best for early intervention to be provided to our children, because when the people involved in the care of the child have a better understanding that this is something the child has no control over, then it changes the way they relate to the child. Okay, and then it also teaches the child, when you catch it early, you can also make the child be aware of what are the difficulties that he is experiencing. What are these? You can tell them directly what they are. Then you can help the child manage it. Ang nangyayari kasi, Dr. Freddy, and over the years of, working with children with ADHD, there can be damage done over the years if this is not caught early. So for example, sasabihin, ang kulit-kulit, nakakainis talaga, hindi marunong sumunod, interrupt. And so the child gets name-called, the child gets ostracized. It can affect relationships. So imagine the impact of that on the child. If the child just thinks, siguro magulo lang ako, kung hindi niya alam. So there can be repercussions when it is diagnosed at a later age, and also because interventions are not provided.
Now, symptoms of ADHD can make life difficult for the adults living with the condition. We'll discuss these challenges after a short break. Stay with us on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
From work to house chores and raising a family, life can be overwhelming for many of us. But these aspects of daily life can be an even bigger struggle for adults with ADHD. Today, we'll discuss the complications they face and some of the misconceptions of the condition. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. Dr. Quads, ADHD can make life difficult for anyone. What are some of the complications that can arise kapag adult na ang isang taong may ADHD?
Children and adolescents, and eventually adults, if they don't understand that the experience or the manifestations are actually symptoms of ADHD, they tend to grow up believing, feeling, thinking that they are inferior to their peers, to schoolmates or to office mates, maybe even less behaved, less obedient, or pasaway.
Parents may find it difficult initially to maybe think that their child may have ADHD. So are there some concrete red flags that they can look at? And one of those things is schoolwork. So what does the performance of a child with ADHD look like?
If a child is predominantly hyperactive, the child will have difficulty staying safe. The child will keep on moving. Okay? However, the child can still do some schoolwork. That means cognitive functioning is also still okay. And then they won't see it masyado as a problem. However, when we are working with children with ADHD, there are what we call comorbidities. Some things are likely to happen more with children with ADHD than others. And so what are some red flags? Learning disabilities, that can be one. Okay? Low, sort of like low self-esteem, the way they see themselves, more likely to develop mood disorders, for example, like being sad and depressed or being anxious. These are some things that we can look at also.
Dr. Quads, let's clear something up, starting with a misconception that ADHD isn't a real condition.
It is a medical condition. It is the most common neurodevelopmental disorder. And we do have diagnostic criteria like Dr. Angie mentioned.
Now, another misconception is that many believe that people with ADHD just need to try harder. They think that because those with ADHD can hyper-focus on their interests, they can do so with other tasks if they really wanted to. Dr. Angie, could you explain this for us?
I've worked with a number of kids, no, and it really breaks my heart because they will say, but I'm trying. I'm doing my best and I can't. And we really have to listen to children. I think that's very important. Listen to your child when they say they're trying and they still can't do it. Because it's not for a lack of trying. It's because it's beyond their control. And when we talk about, Dr. Freddy, about hyperfocus, there are certain environments, there are certain situations that can be highly stimulating, certain activities that can be highly stimulating. And this is when hyperfocus comes in. However, if it's, let's say, the more mundane, less stimulating activities, that's where you see the distractibility really come to the surface. And that's when you're able to say, ay nako, wala, di makafocus.
Now, another misconception is that kids will outgrow ADHD, but many adults are living with this condition. Dr. Angie, discuss this a little bit more with me. Is it possible if a child is diagnosed with ADHD, they can outgrow it?
They do not outgrow ADHD. Again, we said it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's brain-based, it's biological. Once you have it, you live with it for life. However, the difference there would be the ability to manage it better. It may not ever go away. However, your capacity to manage it, to live a good life despite having ADHD, can happen.
If you've been diagnosed with ADHD, you can learn to manage your condition and, better yet, thrive. More on this when we return. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where your health comes first. Dr. Quads, I'd like to ask, what are some of the ways to manage ADHD in adults?
When we manage ADHD, we will target, the strategy is also multifactorial, multidisciplinary. So a combination of pharmacologic and non-pharmacologic intervention. So we have medications for ADHD along with cognitive therapy, behavior therapy, lifestyle modification, and enhancing coping techniques. So combination po siya.
Now, Dr. Angie, we heard how ADHD is managed in adults. Pag na-spot ito early on, is this the same type of approach that you go for kids?
Again, depending also on the severity, we have to be looking at, are the ADHD symptoms mild, moderate, or severe? If it's mild, okay, let's go for counseling, let's go for occupational therapy, let's go for behavioral therapy, let's go for accommodations within the environment, for example. Let's go for lifestyle changes, for example, making sure that the child has physical activity, good food, enough sleep, all of these things. Now, however, if it's moderate to severe and the symptoms are really, there's a high number of symptoms and it affects the functioning of the child, then we also recommend that they see the psychiatrist for possible medication.
Dr. Angie, do we have this type of support system, classes, courses that can help not just the person who has ADHD, but the families or the loved ones around the individual?
Family education is very important. No? When we do assessments, that's one of my main recommendations, education for the parents and for the other family members, because it makes a huge difference when we understand our children better. And yes, there are opportunities. Like, for example, there's an ADHD organization in the country. And then they have webinars, they have education opportunities for parents, for children, and for siblings, even for teachers and caregivers, other caregivers. So that's possible. Psychological organizations, education organizations, or even medical associations, or centers in hospitals, they have all of these trainings, conferences, and talks for parents that can educate parents. And mismo us, psychologists, or like Dr. Quads, as psychiatrists, we can also take it upon ourselves to educate the parents and let them understand better how to support their kids having ADHD.
Is stigma a problem when it comes to trying to spot or diagnose a child with ADHD early?
Yes, it is, because the parents will label the kids generally. Ang kulit, ang gulo, nakakaya naman to. You don't want to bring him to a social gathering. You don't want to, when people are over the house and he's so magulo and he keeps on interrupting. So it matters to the parents and even to the teachers, because the teachers also have a difficult time managing the behavior and can start labeling, can start picking calling the attention of the child more often.
Now let's talk about medication, because this can also be prescribed for adults with ADHD. And studies show that majority of adults with ADHD who take medication have big improvements in their symptoms. Dr. Quads, what are some of the different types of medication available for those diagnosed with ADHD?
The most useful medications for ADHD are what we call stimulants. It might seem counterintuitive.
Right.
So why are we giving stimulants for a hyperactivity disorder? But that actually reflects our understanding of ADHD as a medical disorder. ADHD is not a matter of kulang sa focus or hyperfocus. It's precisely that. It's a hyperfocus, kulang sa focus. It's a dysregulation. Okay, or an irritability, yung likot. So generally, it's a problem with the regulation. So accordingly, in terms of medications, our stimulant medications or ADHD medications in general target to help regulate those cognitive functioning.
Dr. Quads, are there any significant side effects that the viewers should be wary about when it comes to medications for ADHD?
So you could imagine something like caffeine effect, palpitations, some disturbance with appetite. Okay, but other than that, I would like to take this chance to address the most frequent concern with ADHD medication, which is are ADHD medications habit forming or addictive? While there may be that risk for addiction, especially with, say, for example, the amphetamine-like substances or stimulants, this risk is very, very manageable. Okay, especially because we work closely with our patients, or our families work closely together. So the risk for dependence is very much controlled and closely monitored.
But I'd like to just remind our viewers that no two adults with ADHD are the same. So don't think that the medication for one, what is prescribed for one, would work on someone else with ADHD. So the take home from this is work with your doctor to find a treatment plan that suits you best, whether it be medication, therapeutic, or a combination of both. Dr. Angie, before we go, do you have any additional tips for managing ADHD?
One of the most important for me, is looking at the child as a child. First and foremost, he is a child. ADHD is just a condition. So he's a child with ADHD. And he is also struggling. He is trying. He's having a difficult time. And what we need to do is understand, listen, and support our children the best way possible. And we can do this by seeking help if we are unable to do it ourselves at home.
And Dr. Quads, any advice for those adults who may have or who do have ADHD?
What we aim to do is to streamline management per patient. And that's what health education or psychoeducation with the family also targets to do. We want to streamline and, as best we can, tailor fit the management for each individual with ADHD.
I'd like to thank adult psychiatrist Dr. Corazon Angela Cuadro and child psychologist Dr. Angie Sievert Fernandez for guiding us on today's episode. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we'll see you again next time. Stay safe, everyone.
Kini ang sibianan sa RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS